Have you ever wondered if the pain you're enduring right now could be the very catalyst for a greater blessing in your life? C.S. Lewis once posed a similar question: why do the righteous suffer? Why not? They're the only ones who can take it. In moments of deep suffering, it's natural to question the purpose behind our trials. But what if this very pain is not a punishment, but a path to something more profound? Life's challenges can feel suffocating, as if the walls are closing in around us. Yet, in these moments of despair, we are often closest to the breakthrough we seek. You're not alone in these struggles, and there's a deeper meaning behind what you're facing right now. I invite you to stay with me, as the message ahead could illuminate the purpose of your pain and guide you towards a future filled with hope and blessing. In times of deep pain and suffering, it can be challenging to grasp how God is working for our good. Romans 8 verse 28 reassures us, and we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose. Yet, when life feels like an unending storm of loss, illness, financial strain, or broken relationships, this promise may seem distant. The weight of your burdens can feel overwhelming, making you question, why is this happening to me? It's in these moments of despair that our faith is tested most. C.S. Lewis, in his reflections on suffering, insightfully noted, pain insists upon being attended to. God whispers to us in our pleasures, speaks in our consciences, but shouts in our pains. It is His megaphone to rouse a deaf world. Lewis reminds us that suffering is not a sign of God's absence, but rather a profound avenue through which He communicates with us. Like a father who disciplines his child out of love, God allows suffering not to break us, but to shape us into the image of Christ. When you feel abandoned in your pain, remember that Jesus too was a man of sorrows, well acquainted with grief. Isaiah 53 verse 3. He understands your suffering intimately because He has walked that path before you. The journey through pain is often where we find God's presence most vividly. As Lewis suggests, suffering sharpens our awareness of God's love and His purpose for our lives. It's easy to feel abandoned when the darkness seems overwhelming, but it is precisely in these valleys that our faith is forged and refined. In John 16 verse 33, Jesus assures us, in this world you will have trouble. But take heart, I have overcome the world. This is not a promise of a life free from suffering, but a guarantee that suffering is not the final word. Your trials, no matter how insurmountable they seem, are not without purpose. God is using every tear, every heartache to draw you closer to Him and to accomplish something far greater than you can imagine. As Lewis eloquently put it, God allows us to experience the low points of life in order to teach us lessons that we could learn in no other way. In the midst of your suffering, hold on to the truth that you are seen, you are known, and you are deeply loved by a God who will never abandon you. Your pain is not a detour, but a crucial part of a journey that leads to a deeper understanding of God's unwavering love and faithfulness. In the journey of life, suffering often appears as an unwelcome visitor, yet it is through these trials that we are shaped and refined by the hands of a loving God. Just as a potter meticulously molds clay, our hardships serve as tools in God's divine workshop, crafting within us the strength, character, and faith that only such experiences can forge. This idea is powerfully illustrated in the story of Joseph, whose trials, betrayal by his brothers, slavery, and imprisonment were not without purpose. These hardships were integral in preparing him for a destiny that would save countless lives, a plan only visible in hindsight but meticulously orchestrated by God from the beginning. C.S. Lewis, in his profound understanding of human suffering, once remarked, God whispers to us in our pleasures, speaks in our conscience, but shouts in our pains. It is His megaphone to rouse a deaf world. This perspective invites us to view our sufferings not as random acts of misfortune, but as opportunities for transformation. Through our trials, we are invited into a deeper relationship with God, where our reliance on His strength becomes paramount. It is in these moments of vulnerability that we truly grasp the magnitude of God's comfort and guidance, drawing closer to Him as we navigate the storms of life. The Bible teaches us, particularly in Proverbs 3 verse 5 to 6, to trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to Him, and He will make your path straight. This verse echoes the necessity of trust, especially when we face suffering that defies our understanding. God, who sees the beginning from the end, uses these moments to prepare us for the greater things He has in store. Things that our finite minds cannot fully comprehend in the midst of our pain. In the refining fire of suffering, our faith is tested, and if we allow it, deepened. The trials we endure are not punishments, but are rather parts of God's greater plan to strengthen our spirits and prepare us for the tasks ahead. As we endure, we are reminded of Joseph, who, despite the years of suffering, emerged with a faith stronger than ever, equipped to fulfill God's purpose in his life. His story serves as a testament to the transformative power of trusting in God's timing and plan. The assurance we hold on to as believers is that our suffering is not in vain. Romans 8 verse 28 reinforces this truth, and we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose. Our pain, though real and often overwhelming, is a part of the greater tapestry of God's design. Each thread of suffering weaves into a picture far more beautiful and purposeful than we can currently perceive. It is in this hope and assurance that we find the strength to persevere, knowing that God is working behind the scenes, orchestrating every detail for our ultimate good and His glory. In gratitude, we acknowledge that God's guidance is not just present in our moments of joy, but is especially evident in our trials. It is through suffering that we are drawn closer to Him, refined by His love, and prepared for the blessings that lie ahead. This understanding transforms our perspective on suffering, enabling us to trust in His perfect plan and rest in the assurance that He is leading us towards something greater, even when the path seems unclear. As we journey through life's inevitable hardships, let us remember that our suffering has a purpose, that God is always at work, and that our ultimate hope rests securely in Him. In times of pain and suffering, trusting God transcends mere belief. It becomes a deliberate action. This trust requires more than passive faith. It involves the active choice to relinquish fears and doubts, embracing God's promises, even when the reasons behind current struggles remain hidden. C.S. Lewis eloquently observed, "Faith is the art of holding on to things your reason has once accepted." In spite of your changing moods, this sentiment perfectly captures the essence of trusting God in adversity. It's about choosing to believe in His goodness, even when circumstances tempt us to doubt. Surrendering control is a cornerstone of this trust. We often cling to the illusion of control, believing that if we manage every detail, we can prevent pain or ensure success. However, true peace is found in letting go, allowing God to work in His timing and way. Proverbs 3 verse 5 to 6 reminds us, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to Him, and He will make your path straight." This surrender doesn't mean passivity, but a confident release, knowing that God's plans are higher than ours. Yet trusting God doesn't require us to suppress our emotions. In fact, it's crucial to bring our raw, honest feelings to Him, our hurt, confusion, and even anger. The Psalms are filled with David's cries of despair, yet they also demonstrate his unwavering trust in God's love and sovereignty. God is not distant or indifferent. He is deeply empathetic to our pain. As seen in Psalm 34 verse 18, the Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. Acknowledging our emotions before God is not a sign of weakness, but of an intimate relationship where we can be wholly transparent. Trust is not cultivated in grand, sweeping gestures, but in small daily decisions. Simple prayers, moments of reflection, and acts of faith build a foundation strong enough to endure life's toughest seasons. Just as a house is built brick by brick, our faith is fortified by these daily acts of trust. In Matthew 6, verse 34, Jesus encourages us not to worry about tomorrow, emphasizing the importance of daily trust. Therefore, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. Amid suffering, God's promises serve as a foundation, providing strength and sustenance. Verses like Isaiah 41, verse 10, which assures us of God's presence, and 2 Corinthians 12, verse 9, where Paul highlights that God's grace is sufficient even in weakness, become lifelines. These scriptures are not just words, but anchors that hold you steady when the storms of life rage. Matthew 28, verse 20 further assures us of his unwavering presence, and surely I am with you always, to the very end of the age. Perseverance is integral to trusting God. It's the belief that enduring through challenges will, in due time, lead to a harvest of blessings. Galatians 6, verse 9 encourages us, let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. This verse is a reminder that God's timing is perfect, and perseverance and trust will eventually bear fruit. Amidst all pain and uncertainty, one truth remains constant: God's love and presence. Romans 8, verse 28 assures us that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose. Even when it's not immediately visible, God is with us, working all things for our good. His love is unwavering, His presence constant, and His promises sure. Trusting God is an ongoing journey of surrender, emotional honesty, daily faithfulness, and perseverance. It's anchored in the unshakable truths of His promises and His enduring love. As we navigate through life's hardships, may we continually find solace in the fact that God is with us, guiding us, and ultimately working everything for our good. God's promises are not just mere words, they are an unbreakable covenant, a testament of His unwavering faithfulness. In a world that often feels uncertain and unstable, His promises serve as a rock-solid assurance that He is tirelessly working for your good. The power of these promises lies in their divine origin, rooted in His perfect love and righteousness. They are guarantees that will never falter. As C.S. Lewis once eloquently stated, "He who has God and everything else has no more than he who has God only." This profound truth reminds us that trusting in God's promises is to possess all that truly matters. When you meditate on God's promises, you are not merely reciting comforting words, you are drawing strength directly from the Creator. This practice reinforces your faith, anchoring you in the certainty that His word is reliable and true. It's like drinking from a wellspring of spiritual power, one that equips you to face life's challenges with a heart full of trust and confidence. As the psalmist declared, "Your word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path." Psalm 119, verse 105, underscoring the guidance and strength found in God's promises. The Bible is rich with testimonies of God's faithfulness, turning suffering into triumph. Consider the story of Job, a man who lost everything: his wealth, his health, and his family, yet never wavered in his faith. His story is not just one of loss, but of profound restoration. Through his unwavering trust in God, Job's life was transformed into a powerful testimony that has inspired countless generations. Similarly, Joseph's journey from slavery to becoming a ruler in Egypt illustrates how God can use the darkest circumstances to fulfill His purposes. Despite being betrayed by his brothers and wrongfully imprisoned, Joseph's faith remained steadfast, and God used his suffering to save nations. Paul's life further exemplifies how God's power is perfected in weakness. Despite facing relentless persecution, beatings, and imprisonment, Paul's trials only strengthened his resolve to spread the gospel. His sufferings were not in vain; they became the foundation of his powerful ministry, showing that God's grace is sufficient even in the most challenging times. Your story, too, is part of this divine narrative. The suffering you endure today is not the end of your story, it is the shaping of a testimony that will glorify God and inspire others. Like Job, Joseph, and Paul, your pain will become a beacon of hope, a testament to God's unchanging faithfulness. Transformation through suffering is a theme that runs deep in the Christian faith. These trials are not just obstacles but opportunities for growth. They forge deeper faith, refine character, and strengthen your relationship with God. As you trust in His promises, you are reminded that your story is still being written. The trials you face are not in vain, they are the very tools God uses to shape you into a vessel for His glory. Take heart and trust in God's ongoing work in your life. Your testimony is still unfolding, and it will be a powerful witness to God's goodness and faithfulness. The C.S. Lewis wisely observed, hardships often prepare ordinary people for an extraordinary destiny. Your current trials are preparing you for something extraordinary. Trust that God's promises will see you through to the end. In the journey of life, suffering often feels like an unwelcome guest, bringing pain and despair. Yet, as the Apostle Paul reminds us in Romans 5, verse 3-4, suffering produces perseverance, character, and character, hope. This verse encapsulates the profound truth that suffering is not merely an obstacle to overcome but a necessary process that leads to our spiritual and personal growth. It's through the trials and tribulations of life that we develop the resilience and character needed to become more like Christ. C.S. Lewis. In his classic work, The Problem of Pain, suggests that God whispers to us in our pleasures, speaks in our conscience, but shouts in our pains. It is His megaphone to rouse a deaf world. This striking imagery illustrates how God uses our suffering to capture our attention and draw us closer to Him. In the furnace of affliction, our faith is tested and purified, much like gold refined by fire. It's in these moments of intense struggle that the impurities of fear, doubt, and pride are burned away, leaving behind a faith that is stronger and more resilient. Much like a muscle that grows stronger through the strain of exercise, our spiritual muscles are strengthened through the trials we face. These hardships serve as spiritual exercises, preparing us for the future that God has planned for us. They refine us, molding us into the people God has called us to be. The process is not easy, but it is necessary for our growth. As James 1 verse 2-4 encourages us, consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work, so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. Through suffering, we learn lessons that cannot be taught in times of ease. It deepens our empathy for others, as we understand the pain they may be going through. It increases our patience as we learn to wait on God's timing rather than rushing ahead with our own plans. And most importantly, it strengthens our reliance on God, reminding us that we cannot navigate the storms of life on our own. As C.S. Lewis poignantly observed, hardships often prepare ordinary people for an extraordinary destiny. One of the most challenging aspects of suffering is trusting in God's timing. Often we want immediate relief from our pain, but God's plans for our growth take time. Each struggle we endure contributes to our development, transforming our pain into sources of strength, wisdom, and hope. We must trust that God is at work in our lives, even when we cannot see the immediate results. As Ecclesiastes 3 verse 11 reminds us, He has made everything beautiful in its time. It's also essential to remember that suffering is temporary. The trials we face are part of God's plan to prepare us for a future of restoration and strength. In 1 Peter 5 verse 10, we are assured that after you have suffered a little while, the God of all grace, who has called you to His eternal glory in Christ, will Himself restore, confirm, strengthen, and establish you. This promise from God gives us the hope we need to endure, knowing that our suffering will not last forever and that He will use it to make us stronger and more steadfast than before. Throughout all our suffering, we can take comfort in knowing that God is present with us. He does not abandon us in our trials, but uses them to guide and shape us into the people He has called us to be. The image of a tree growing stronger roots after a storm is a powerful metaphor for how God uses suffering to deepen our faith and prepare us for a stable and secure future. Just as gold is refined in the fire, so too are we refined through our suffering, emerging from the process more precious and enduring. In this process of growth, we are reminded to express our gratitude to God. He is the one who guides us through our darkest moments, using even our suffering to bring about His purposes. As we endure the trials of life, let us remember to thank God for His faithfulness, knowing that He is at work in us, refining us, and preparing us for the future He has planned. Our suffering is not in vain. It is part of the greater story that God is writing in our lives, a story of growth, restoration, and ultimate victory in Him. In the grand tapestry of life, our experiences of suffering are not random threads, but integral parts of a design that stretches into eternity. C.S. Lewis once said, "Pain insists upon being attended to." God whispers to us in our pleasures, speaks in our conscience, but shouts in our pains. It is His megaphone to rouse a deaf world. This profound statement echoes the belief that our present sufferings, though intense, serve a purpose far beyond what we can see. They are not just fleeting moments of discomfort, but are intricately woven into God's divine plan, leading us toward eternal glory, where every tear is wiped away, and every pain is transformed into joy. In the midst of our trials, it's easy to feel lost, questioning why such hardships are necessary. Yet, even when the path seems dark and uncertain, we are called to trust in God's sovereign plan. Proverbs 3 verse 5-6 reminds us, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to Him, and He will make your path straight." This verse encapsulates the essence of faith, relinquishing our need to control and understand every aspect of our journey, and instead surrendering to God's greater wisdom. Though we may not see the full picture, we can be assured that He is leading us to something far greater, filled with peace, strength, and everlasting love. The pain we endure is not without purpose. It is a refining fire, preparing us for a future that holds immeasurable glory and eternal joy. James 1 verse 2-4 tells us, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work, so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything." Our sufferings, therefore, are not to be viewed as meaningless, but as essential steps in our spiritual growth. They are tools in God's hands, shaping us into the people we are meant to be, ready to embrace the fullness of His promises. One of the most powerful acts we can perform in our suffering is to surrender it to God. By doing so, we acknowledge His sovereignty and trust that He is working all things for our good. Romans 8 verse 28 affirms this, stating, "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose." Surrender is not a sign of weakness, but of profound faith, believing that God is using our pain to bring about something far greater in our lives. In these challenging moments, we must seek strength in God's Word. It is through Scripture that we find the courage to endure, the wisdom to understand, and the faith to persevere. Psalm 119 verse 105 declares, "Your word is a lamp for my feet, a light on my path." Let us therefore immerse ourselves in His Word, allowing it to guide us through the darkness, nurturing our faith as we face life's trials. Patience and trust are vital as we wait on God's timing. Often we are tempted to rush through our pain, eager to escape the discomfort. However, Ecclesiastes 3 verse 11 reminds us, He has made everything beautiful in its time. The period of suffering is not the end, but rather the beginning of something magnificent that God is preparing for us. Our role is to remain patient, trusting that His timing is perfect and that He will bring beauty from our pain. In moments of deep anguish, prayer becomes our lifeline. It is in prayer that we invite God's presence into our pain, asking Him to transform it into a testimony of His faithfulness. Philippians 4 verse 6-7 encourages us, "Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus." Through prayer, we find peace and understanding, knowing that God is with us in our suffering and that He is at work even in the most challenging circumstances. Let this be an encouragement to continue trusting in God, even when life doesn't make sense. Remember that He is working all things for your good, and your faith in Him will not be in vain. And let this message be a source of strength and motivation, knowing that your trust in God is not only shaping your life but also inspiring others. As you walk this journey, remember that God is with you, guiding you toward a future filled with His glory and love. Let us offer our gratitude to God, for He is ever present in our struggles, guiding us through the storms and leading us to a place of peace and joy. Let us thank Him for His unwavering faithfulness, for using our pain to shape us into the people He created us to be. May our lives be a testament to His goodness, and may we continue to trust in His perfect plan, knowing that He is leading us to a glorious destiny.